Hey there, it's Critter Trades here, and today I'm going to talk about why a CVT transmission is underrated. So, first of all, CVT transmissions, they get a lot of hate, and I think a lot of the hate is very unwarranted, and there's a few reasons why. Do I think it's the best transmission type? It depends on the application. Do I think there are situations where it is superior to either a manual or a traditional automatic transmission? Yes. Do I think there are some situations where it is worse? Yes. And again, it depends on what you want it to be used for. Now, I have just a Impreza hatchback Sport. And it's got 150 horsepower. It's really slow, and it has a CVT. And I had never owned a CVT before this, and it actually, I was pretty nervous before I got the car. And I had heard a lot about the Nissan CVTs with all the issues they've had breaking down. And the Subaru ones seem to have a better reputation, but again, they extended the warranty on them to 10 years and 100,000 miles. So, it kind of, I was a little skeptical at first. Now, what changed my mind was the fact that there are two really, really nice things about the CVT. And the first one is that when you are using it for like just a cruising car, like an economy box like mine is, it's super smooth. And that was one thing I wasn't really expecting. There aren't any clunky downshifts when you're going up a hill. There's no clunks, there's no bumps, there's no big jerks back and forth when you're driving. It's super smooth from takeoff, and again, there's no gears. It just uses belts and an air system to change the ratio of the drive, the input and the output from the motor to the wheels. And so it's actually super smooth, and for a daily driver, it's awesome because, again, you're not getting these massive boom clunky downshifts when you have to accelerate to go up a big hill or something. It just starts revving up and picks up and just takes off. So that's one thing I really like about it, how smooth it is. And I like to compare it to the ZF 8-speed transmission because that's in a lot of BMWs, and my wife's Jeep has it, and that is kind of considered to be one of the smoothest or best, obviously not the best, but one of the smoothest newer traditional automatic transmissions. And it feels clunky compared to the CVT in my Subaru. And it's not because my car is new or anything. My wife's car is a 2014 Grand Cherokee, and this is a 2012 Sport with 100,000 miles, so it's not because it's just new. It's just a lot smoother transmission. So that's one of the things I really like about it. The other thing I really like about it is how economical it can be. And in an economy car like this, it's tuned to be for fuel economy. And even though this is all-wheel drive, I can get right around like 34, 35, 36 mile per gallon with all-wheel drive, which is pretty impressive for how heavy it needs to be adding on the all-wheel drive. So those are some of the things I really like about it. And actually, even though this car is kind of a dog in terms of how slow it is, when you rev it up and really put your foot down, it's kind of cool to see the tach just go straight from 0 all the way up to peak horsepower up at 6,000 RPM. And if you keep your foot there, it'll just stay at peak horsepower the whole time. And so once you get up to the RPM, the power band, it just kind of stays there, and it keeps chugging along, which is kind of cool. Now, again, this isn't a sporty car. It's not a tuned transmission. It's not a tuned CVT for performance. But again, it does a pretty good job, and it really kind of it can kind of adapt to whatever situation it needs to be in. If you need it to be economical, it can be. It can stay in whatever the best rev range is for fuel economy, because again, it doesn't have these gears it needs to keep shifting and revving up. It can just kind of stay in that rev area where the best miles per gallon are, and it can stay there. It just changes the gear ratio to keep the revs there, and that's kind of one of the things I really like about it. Now, some of the downsides are some people don't like the reviness of it. Some people think it sounds really weird because it just goes and just kind of has this weird noise all the time, so it gets a lot of hate for that. I think it's just kind of something different, and people don't really like things that are different, kind of like electric cars, how they're quiet, and people want to hear the rumble of your exhaust. So I think that's where a lot of the misconceptions come about it, is with the unknowns, and again with the reliability concerns, and just that it's new. People don't like new things when they first come out, and it takes a while for them to get used to them, and it takes a while for them to start to like them. I also have a few videos, and if you want to check them out, they're on my channel, of different rev ratings for CVT. I have one where I just do a 0 to 90 pull on my car, where it just revs up to peak horsepower and stays there. And then I have a few acceleration videos where I do a really slow acceleration where it does fake shifts, and most of those fake shifts are for fuel economy reasons, especially when you're accelerating slowly. And I do some like half throttle and full throttle ones, so you can kind of see the different ways that the CVT is tuned to shift in my Subaru. And again, not all CVTs are tuned the same way. They tune fake shifts into them for various reasons. Sometimes it's to make them seem more like a traditional automatic. Sometimes it's just for fuel economy though, so that they can stay in the best range for miles per gallon. So you can check those out if you want to. I think if a CVT was made for performance, so let's say you have like a 500 horsepower, 500 foot torque pounds, like just a muscle car, for example, there aren't really very many high torque CVTs out there. And I think a lot of the reliability stuff happens when people tune their CVTs or mod their cars with CVTs, and they give it more power than it's rated for, and then it breaks and they end up complaining, like a lot of the Subarus. I know the WRX came with CVTs, and I think people are kind of realizing that they can't push them too hard or they'll just kind of break because they're not made for that. So I think if someone were to come out with a high torque, a high horsepower CVT and put it into a performance car, and they actually looked at tuning it to be made for that, it would be a pretty wicked machine, because again, it could just sit there at peak horsepower or peak torque or whatever you wanted, or whatever would be best, and you could tune it that way, and it would just sit there and just rip around revving like crazy. And I think another big part of it too is a lot of people, and I think Americans are especially prone to doing this, people don't like to rev their cars out. I don't know if they're afraid of breaking them, or if they like the big torque heavy V8s, or the turbocharged where they get torque a lot sooner in the RPM band. But it seems like people are kind of afraid or don't like revving their cars way out up into the high RPMs. And a CVT makes it so that revving it up like that is where you want it to run at. And again, that's kind of how a lot of race cars are, where you want to run them up at high RPMs where they make more power. So I think it's a good transmission. I think right now it's kind of in its baby steps of getting going and getting people used to it, so they aren't really putting it in performance cars yet. But I think once we get past the point of, okay, reliability is not as much of a concern, and I'm kind of used to this, it's kind of cool when it revs up and stays revved all over the place. I think once we get past that point, it'll become a more common transmission in performance cars. I think it'd be cool to see, but yeah, I think it's got a long ways to go still. Thanks for watching, and have a good one. See ya.